So today I'm going to show you guys how to make basic container candles, and you can really have a lot of fun with the containers. You can make these out of mason jars or old yogurt jars, or these were some little like gourd-shaped containers that a friend gave to me, so I just filled them with wax and made candles out of them. So the materials list is in the description box below, so let's get started. So the first thing you'll need is some container blend soy wax, and a lot of people measure it by weight, but I just like to measure it by cup. You get pretty much the same amount in a cup. And then you want either a double boiler or 2 pans, so you put water in the bottom pan and your wax in the top pan. And then you want something to cover up your work surface because candle making is very messy. Even newspapers will work. And then while your wax is melting down, get your containers ready. I've got yogurt jars, mason jars. I usually do 2 wicks in a mason jar because they're wider, old candle holders, and these little gourd containers that I'm going to be using for this tutorial. Now I like to add in my color before the wax is actually melted because that way it melts and it gives it a nice even colorant throughout the wax because it melts down when the wax does, and then I don't have to wait extra time for the color to melt. So they do have liquid colors, but I'm using the block colors here, and I just take a knife and just put in the shavings. And of course you can mix colors to make different shades than what you can get in the pre-made blocks. Basically, if you have yellow, blue, and red, you can make a lot of colors. So once your wax and your colorant have all melted together, put a few drops on a piece of white paper. I usually just dip my knife in. My knife is what I use for my stirring stick, so I just dip it in. And wait till it's completely cooled so you know what color it's actually going to be. Mine was a little light, so I put in some more colorant. See, there's the original, and then there's the color I'm going to use here, the darker kind of orange. And so once everything's ready, you can get color the way you like it. You can add in your scent. I usually put in 4 dropperfuls of fragrance oil per cup of wax. If you're using essential oil, you'll have to use a little more because they're not quite as strong. They also don't last as long, so that's why I usually use fragrance oil for the candles. Then of course stir it all in. Again, I'm just using my knife. And then I generally pour around 130 degrees when the wax hits 130 degrees because it keeps it from cracking. So then you'll be needing some wick. You want to use square braid wick for container candles. When you're using natural waxes, you want to go up another wick size than what's recommended because they're hotter burning waxes. You can put little wick clips on the bottom of your wicking, but I generally don't just because I measure them right from the bottom of the container and I get them started in there. I'll show you in a second. But just measure them about 1 inch taller than your container is what I do. Give myself plenty of wicking. And then ready to pour, so just pour a tiny little bit of wax in the bottom of each of your containers. And then you want to take either a wick holder, or I just took a piece of cardboard and cut some slits in the center. The wick fits right in, just like that, and holds the wick tight. So I just made these out of scrap cardboard. And so while the wax is still hot, dip the wick in the end, measure out where it needs to be at the top, and stick that into your piece of cardboard. And then you just want to center that in the container so that they're all right in the center, and the wick is all the way through the wax, touching the bottom of the container. If you have one that's a little bent, just dip it into the wax and then just hold it straight until it cools, and that'll keep your wick nice and straight once it's dry there, and then you'll be able to stick it in there easier. So here there, once I've got all the wicks in there, you just want to let those cool. Once it's nice and hard, you want to make sure it's fully hardened and cool. You can take off your little wick holders and then fill the rest of your candles almost all the way up. You don't want to fill them quite as high as you want them because you have to do a second pouring, but fill them most of the way up, and then pull your wick up nice and tight and put your little wick holders back on the wick. Again, making sure that they're all nice and centered and nice and tight. Let's pull them up nice and tight and let those get mostly cool. And you'll notice that the center starts to depress a little bit, so just take a wire and push it into that depression. You know, some of it's hollow, so you're just going to do a second pouring so that the hole is filled, and cover just a little bit of the top so that you don't see any rough edges. And then once the candles have completely dried, you'll have nice smooth candles with no depressions in the center and no air bubbles. Then just cut off the wicks about 1/2 inch long, and they are ready to burn.